session today is where is IT certification and what do educators need to know? And I'm joined today by a panel of industry experts, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. The company I work for is called Caveon. We're a test security company, and we work with a lot of IT certification companies. So we'll just go down the road. Mark, you want to start?
Good morning. I'm Mark Conway. I'm with NetApp, and I'm part of NetApp University, where we deliver the certifications for our company, customers, and partners.
I'm Janet Lehr, and I'm from HP. And we also have a training and certification program called ExpertONE, and we also train our partners, our customers, and our employees on IT.
Hi, I'm Kris. I'm from Google, and I work in Google's enterprise division, and we train both partners and also customers.
My name is Ima Rutella, and I'm with Kaplan, and the IT training division specifically. So we produce IT certification training products for self-pacers and for universities, training centers, boot camps.
So what we've done in preparation for this session today is that we came up with a number of questions that we thought would be pertinent that you would want to ask us as IT professional, people that are running and managing IT certification programs. So we'll go ahead and kind of go through that panel discussion first, and then we'll hold questions to the end. And because we are kind of backed up against lunch, we're very happy to stay here and talk to folks afterwards. So our first question to get started is, what technologies are driving your organization's certification programs? Kris, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So being in Google's enterprise division, we develop and support Gmail and also Google Apps. How many of you either have a Gmail account or perhaps have used Google Apps? Great. Yeah, we do give that away for free for educational institutions. So that's our focus. We sell, or we both train and certify our partner companies who do development and also deploy and support Google Apps and sell it into different companies around the world. And we also do some customer training. And the area that we have focused our customer training on is Google Apps Administrator. So there's about 5 million customers of Google Apps in the corporate sector worldwide, and each of those have to have at least one administrator. So we're really focused there on helping them get trained and certified. And in fact, we've recently introduced both free online training and certification for Google Apps. We have a great course that we spend a lot of time really designing and making sure it's kind of a beautiful user experience. That's free for anybody to go out there and learn from. And after you've gone through that, you can go on to take certification if you choose. Our certification is actually delivered online. It's through a platform that we've developed. So anything really can be done, from the comfort of your home or office.
Christine, do you want to talk at all about some of the technologies that you kind of foresee that certificants and individuals are kind of anticipated or kind of in need of right now?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about Google Apps Administration. I mean, that's obviously a big area. The more that we're selling into companies around the world, the more administrators that will be needed. I think in general, and I believe this is a topic that we'll hit later, but there's just a huge need for IT skills in general. I think beyond the administration skills that I talked about, a huge need for developers, especially in the cloud space. Google has their own cloud platform set of products. Amazon has similar products. A lot of the IT companies have similar cloud-based platforms. And I think that's another huge area where we're going to need developers going forward in the future.
Mark, do you want to add your thoughts from that perspective?
Sure. I'm from NetApp, which is a storage vendor, so we have a certain bias. So certainly the growth in managing and securing and moving data is an area. We at NetApp probably have a half dozen certifications, kind of a tier that goes up and gets more technical and more specified as you go up the ladder. But two that we just released in the last month or so is we do a lot of work with Cisco, VMware, and things like that. It's kind of this converged infrastructure. And so we've now got a couple new certifications on a NetApp solution. It's called FlexPod. But basically what it requires is, someone to understand storage, networking, and virtualization. And, I know I see some faces from folks who were in one of my sessions yesterday, but, that idea, I view those three technologies as sort of the key legs to the stool. And, if students can, whether they get certifications or the badging or, but know those three technologies and how they work together, I think that's, they're going in the right direction.
Great. Janet, can you talk to us about some of the skill sets that you see organizations needing? This kind of ties into technologies. But
exactly. So yes, we would say what we see is what Mark just alluded to, is that combination that no longer are engineers going to be siloed. And we've seen difficulty with the network engineers speaking to the server engineers and being able to resolve issues. There's a lot of finger pointing and they just don't speak the same language. So having that, some cross-training is really important. And then in addition to that, having the business background to apply to the technology is another gap that we are trying to focus on at HP, is because understanding what is the business problem that the technology is supposed to be solving.
Great. Anything to add?
I wanted to, just a quick note, on the training side of things, we've also seen career changers, mostly professional development, or continuing education students, so adults that have been in the IT world for many, many years in their very siloed and very specialized positions, coming back for training in areas just so that they can either get a new job, get a promotion, or work better with existing teams within an IT department in their company. So we've seen a lot of upskilling that doesn't necessarily map to a specific certification today, as it exists today, but just for upskilling within their own company or to get that new position. So we've seen a trend in that, I'd probably say over the last 2 or 3 years, where these roles are morphing a little more, or the need for the cross-training has become very real in their current jobs.
And I know we heard Clark talk about this earlier about why certification, why is certification important, and you talked about it just a little bit now. But why should instructors be interested in moving their students towards certification? Kris, why don't you go and then we'll do Kris.
Okay. So what we try to encourage our training partners, we do both the retail sales for the self-paced, but we do a lot of business with training institutions, both for credit and non-credit, like the boot camps or the certification training centers. And what we try to encourage in these programs is, it might take 2 to 4 years for someone to come out of your program with a degree. So let's build some milestones in between so that they're not looking at spending a fortune plus a whole lot of time to get a degree, then another small fortune to start their certification training, then take a certification, and then look for a job. That translates to a heck of a lot of years and a whole lot of expense for a student. So why we should be trying to bake into these existing programs these credentials, just so we can have these candidates or these students demonstrate some job skills, some real employable skills in the job market while they're still going through your degree programs. So we've been working with training partners for a long time in order to do that, map them to our training products. How can we better create our training materials to still map to these certifications from some of these vendors, but to be easily to complement really what your curriculum that you're delivering in the classroom already.
And Kris, when we were talking earlier, you were giving the example of Microsoft and how Microsoft has done some partnering with community colleges. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I used to formerly work with Microsoft and manage a community college program, and what I saw there that was so successful and actually was incredibly exciting was so many of these community colleges do such a fabulous job, I think, of preparing students for that job. You know, they're very focused on that final outcome. And I saw so many schools kind of embrace certification, you know, as a tool to help a student gain employment. And it was nice because not only were they helping that student land that job that was so needed in the industry, but in many cases there was a lot of financial rewards for the school too, whether they were delivering it, you know, through an evening program or in a continuing education division. You know, I saw a lot of ways for them, you know, to bring in a fair amount of money to help fund other aspects of the school. So it actually was a wonderful partnership. And the thing that's so great about community colleges is that they're so accessible. You know, when you look around the country, I mean, I think it's like 80 or 90% of people like live within 30 minutes of a community college. I mean, it's such a wonderful resource in the community. So for us, that was such a great experience, you know, and I think it was a wonderful experience for the students too.
Okay.
You know, one thing I'd throw in, you know, from a company's perspective, you know, from a hiring manager. You know, we've had these discussions at these MPICs for a number of years around, you know, what does ICT mean? And do you have a degree in computer science or business information systems or computer information systems? And so I think sometimes hiring managers aren't sure, well, what does a degree actually mean this person can do? But if they have a certification that says this person can, you know, run a Cisco network, this person can install a NetApp file, or this person, it's a bit more quantifiable or specific. And so the anecdotal feedback I get from many of the students who get our certifications is it doesn't guarantee them a job, but it differentiates them from the competition. It gets them a foot in the door to go in and sell themselves kind of thing. So, you know, by you providing the students an opportunity to get that certification, I think you're increasing their job potential, I guess.
We were, along with this topic, we were discussing the whole idea of micro-credentialing. So I'm wondering, how many people know what micro-credentialing is? Badges or
fresh in your mind.
Yeah. People know why we were talking about it.
Okay. So how do you, Janet, maybe you can talk, how do you see micro-credentialing fitting into this whole idea of certification and making sure, validating that people have necessary skill sets?
So I would say that, you know, at HP, whether badges or micro-credentials are still kind of in the definition stage. They're kind of in their infancy in that everybody may not implement them the same way by the time, you know, a couple years from now when there's many of them out there to be attainable. But we are looking at badges as a complement to the full-blown certification. So a full-blown certification might take several weeks of training. It could take multiple proctored exams. The badges could be complementary or what we would consider either a continuing education or a very specific skill set that is maybe a little bit more niche. And so a combination of certification and badges would actually show somebody's true skill set. And the idea is somebody could easily pick up, you know, 5 or 10 badges in a year. They're low cost, they're easily attainable, not as much of an investment of time or money. And so we see them as a nice complement to each other.
Kris, you want to?
Yeah, the thing that I love about badging is, right, it's a great way to build a portfolio. You know, you come out of school and, you know, you have your degree, you know, perhaps you have a certification or two, but I think with badging is you can pursue many different areas, you know, as Janet was talking about, and you can add that into the portfolio. And what's so wonderful is there's so many great services to do this online now, and most of them are free. You know, Coursera, edX, Udacity is all doing some incredibly interesting things in this area. And, you know, I've been through some Coursera courses, and when I put my weeks in it, I complete, you know, and I get my little badge and I can put it on my LinkedIn profile. That feels good. You know, it's by no means a degree or anything like that, but it still feels good. So I think having that experience, you know, plus I think it shows that a person, you know, really enjoys learning and they want to go out and they want to strive for it, and you know, that track record of success is really what's so important sometimes in getting your foot in the door at a company, especially when you don't have work experience. And, to me, this is one way to show that, hey, I'm willing to go out there and learn, and to better myself. And I think that's a great message to an employer.
Anything?
Yeah, I would agree. And I was laughing because don't underestimate the power of that acronym after the name. So I think it's a specific breed of people in the IT industry, but our students, and I don't even have to go that far, my team, we hoard credentials like nobody's business. And so our marketing manager is forever on top of my team because our signatures tend to grow because no one wants to drop any of those credentials that they have had for 20 years. It's an acronym after my name. I'm putting it on there. It grows and grows. And I think, for today, that's what these badges are. It's really bragging rights for these IT pros. And it's those incremental milestones. So it's an immediate gratification. It's some work product that's tangible, and they can put that icon on their LinkedIn profile or in their signature and share with everyone without having to request a score report or email someone to send you a transcript. You can see it. You can see it on their profile. You can see it in their signature that they've accomplished something with while they're in the job market or while they're in their degree programs.
Mark, anything to add?
Well, I'll be honest, maybe like Janet, it's kind of a new area for us that in terms of the badging, and I don't know a whole lot about it. I'm learning more, so.
Question?
Yes.
Does it become important then where the badge comes from, who has taught the skills? How important is that?
I think it's important because that's what lends the credibility, right? So if I, if I get a certification from Microsoft versus perhaps a third-party company that you have not heard from, which one would you value more? So, and I think that's where the whole credibility comes into play with badging and micro-credentialing, is it's the person, who has issued that badge or that micro-credential. And what's so great is with all the online technology now is it makes it really easy for those credible agencies, to go ahead and provide those services online, and makes it so much more accessible than it would have been 20 years ago.
Let's go on to our next question. And this is a good one. We had a great discussion about this. And the question is, what recommendations do you have to encourage more women to enter the IT field?
3 out of 4. Completely by accident.
I know. Aren't we enough?
Janet, you want to start?
Sure. Having been in kind of I had a computer science degree, and at the time I knew there was a job opportunity, but over the last 30 years, I would just try to encourage being awareness of lots of different career paths. So I think there's kind of a perception. I had the perception when I graduated that I would be a programmer. I was a software analyst, a software programmer, but everyone who is a programmer has evolved into so many different directions. I went into teaching, and I'm into certification. You can go into marketing or product management, and there are so many ways, so many directions that you can go, and it kind of goes into really even into sales or support, or there's so many different ways to go that I think that women that would feed the things that they're looking for, the interaction and the engagement, or you're not going to be coding programs necessarily for that. You may, but you may not. You may evolve into so many different directions. And to me, I think that's something that may not be obvious to a 16-year-old who's thinking about a college direction.
Yes.
Just as a show of hands, how many from around here, which include multiple states who are here, have state-funded or state-initiated workforce training? For instance, in the state of Missouri, we call it breaking traditions. and it's for what they call non-traditional, which kind of chased me anyway. The idea that you can assign a gender to a trade is really kind of tough to take. But how many of you have state-funded programs or have something running like that through college? The state of Missouri has something called Breaking Traditions, and if you'd like to know a little bit more about it after this, I'd be glad to tell you about it. I push women in IT, really. And they don't have to do sales and marketing. I've got women who are pulling copper, I've got women who are setting up VMs, the women doing tech support. There's no reason to have implementations.
Let me take one more question, and then we'll segue to Mark.
I don't know if you're going to cover this topic, but when it comes to underrepresented populations, especially in California, one of the challenges I see are the costs of the certification exam, even with the academic discount. And I don't know, I'm just putting that out there as an observation, but I have a lot of students that can't afford even the $70 or the $100, and I think that's a lot of money, even with an academic price to take those exams. And I just wanted to put that out there while we're on the topic.
Okay, let me. I've got it noted, so we'll come back. Mark, I'm going to have Mark talk about NetApp program.
Well, it seems odd that I might be, speaking as to women in technology, but NetApp, we have a fairly broad program for women in technology. We're very committed to, you don't want to miss out on half the workforce, so we aggressively try to work with that. I work closely with the group that sells to higher education. So we actually have a program. It's run by our Vice President of Sales at America's Channels, happens to be a woman. She had a degree in computer science, but yeah, she's had a personal passion about trying to attract young women and girls into IT. And so we often, maybe a dozen times a year, will run women in technology events at some of our academic customers. And it's a simple thing. Basically, they put together a panel of 5, 6, 7 always pretty impressive women who started in IT and then have a variety of backgrounds. And it's basically to show young women what the opportunities are if you do get the degree, whether it's teaching or marketing or sales or pulling copper. And I've been to maybe half a dozen of them. And when you see the breadth of what these women have done, I think it opens up the eyes for young girls. And it's been successful for us. And I was struck yesterday, I mentioned that I think it was Tony Colson from San Bernardino, University of San Bernardino, mentioned that they just hosted 300 Girl Scouts at their school a couple months back. And, getting young girls at that age who have no idea of, what an engineer might be doing, I think is a great point to be placing the seeds. And that if they get along far enough and need a certification, it adds to that.
Kris, let me have you speak to it, and I think you could also maybe speak to the cost of certification for students, because you alluded to that, or you mentioned it earlier, so I'll have you kind of talk about both.
Yeah, so getting more women and underrepresented populations into technology careers is a huge focus at Google. And not only are we running programs, but we've sent all our employees through something called unconscious bias training. And really what that is about is so many of us have biases that we're not even aware of. And whether it's towards certain populations or certain genders. And there's this huge commitment inside of the company to break down those biases so that when we're in interview situations, we're not walking into those interview situations. And it was amazing for me, even as a female, realizing that, hey, I hold some of these biases too that I didn't even realize that I held. So I think that's at least a step in the right direction. But in general, I think the larger issue is about building role models. We talked, a little bit about panels, of women and exposing young girls to that. But there's just so, I think, few role models for girls, in the educational system, especially at the younger grades. And that's critical. They need to be able to see someone like them doing a job so they realize that's a possibility. And so I can't emphasize enough anybody who has that background just kind of getting out into the school systems and doing volunteer work in that area. In terms of the price, that's certainly a concern. And one of the things that I think we're fortunate enough at Google to be able to do is essentially give away a lot for free because of our revenue model. And we've taken that to our training and certification. Our online training for administrators is free. Anybody can go out there and take it. There is a cost, you're right, for our certification exams, and that is $100 stay. But we do work with a lot of schools, to give away vouchers for free, and we try to do the right thing so that we're getting more people exposed to that.
We have a certification program where we do provide the vouchers for the students at no charge. We do use the MLB rule, 3 strikes you're out. We give them the first one for nothing, the second one if they're close and the professor lobbies, the third time they're on their own though, but the first one.
And that's the comment I wanted to make. I think a lot of that onus is on us as well, trainers and vendors alike, to work directly with the schools so we, the one flavor doesn't fit everyone. So, one model in a school in a certain city might not be the same model for a school in a different city. So we also could probably work on being a little more flexible with our models, with our education models and our certification models for particular training centers in particular regions and populations around the country and globally. So just recently on your point about, and I'm with you, what's your first name? I'm sorry, we've quoted you about 50 times. The gentleman right in front of you, yes, you. David. David, hi. We keep quoting what you said and when, know your name. So back to what David was saying. So I do prefer to broaden, at least, at Kaplan, broaden this. It's not just women in IT. It's all underrepresented populations in IT. And we've recently, just the IT certification business has done a lot of global training work. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge culturally. It's a challenge on language. And there was a particular institution in Brazil that the sales cycle was growing and growing, and we were making no progress, bless you. And the executive team was coming back saying, they are real adamant about having content translated. And I said, well, most of these credentials they're going after will not be in Portuguese. I mean, the test itself was not delivered in this particular area. It was not translated. So I don't know that it's the right step to translate that training material. It's not gonna simulate the exam experience. It's not gonna, at the end of the day, I took a couple of my team out and we sat at the table with them. Only kept a couple of chosen execs at the table. I can just get in the way sometimes. And when it came down to it, they weren't looking for their training content to be they wanted the business transaction to be in their language. So I know enough Portuguese to be dangerous, and they just wanted to feel comfortable about the terms of the transaction, and we're not really looking to recreate an entire curriculum. And so you have to be very sensitive to not just the student and the gender, but the culture that you're working in. And I think that's true. We don't have to go across the ocean or over the border for that to be true. We see that a lot with with the cities around the U.S. as well. But I think a lot of that has to come, like what Kris was saying, we have to educate ourselves before we go out into the communities and try to educate these students, right? So we'll, working a little closer with the guys that are actually in the classrooms, with you and your instructors.
Okay, great. Janet, I'm going to let you start off talking about this next one. It's how important is experience in achieving certification?
So experience kind of has 2 flavors. One is that when we claim that someone has achieved a certification, we want to have a seal of approval that they can actually perform on the job. So experience is important, and in preparation and in applying the skills to different situations. So we build in a lot of scenario-based questions, a lot of, and we want to make sure that when we tell you all the facts, that you can that our candidates can apply it in a variety of situations. And so applying the knowledge is important, and then that kind of demonstrates experience that, they may or may not have a lot of experience, kind of a catch-22. If I needed a lot of experience, why maybe I didn't need the certification. The certification is supposed to open doors to to get experience. So we try to, in our training and our testing, we try to teach the base information and apply it in a variety of different ways to make sure that they can do that forward thinking. And so it is very important. We don't want folks, it's hard, people don't want to hire folks just on book knowledge. They want to know what you can do.
Clark talked about that in the keynote today too, about making sure that people have lab time. You know, labs are really important.
Yeah, because they're hands-on. I know a lot of programs, I'm not familiar, maybe you guys can speak to this. Do your certification programs provide candidate profiles? A lot of them do, some of them don't. But do you make recommendations on your, publicly on your website or on your certification candidate that gives them some type of profile with some guidelines?
So let's talk about what is a candidate profile. Who wants to take that?
So in our certifications, it's a tiered program, and we have a description of a candidate at the entry level has this kind of a profile. They probably have 1 to 2 years of experience in networking or servers versus maybe 4 to 5 years, and that they can implement solutions that look like this.
Right.
So that's what we're
Very
talking
good.
about.
Yeah.
Same word profile.
Yeah.
So yes, we do describe, so by the time you get to the highest level, obviously, if you are working retail yesterday, you're probably not going to go straight up there.
Right.
On the flip side of that, we at NetApp about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, we designed and developed an entry-level certification. We have kind of a ladder of maybe half a dozen of them, I think, as I mentioned. But the entry-level one that we previously had, and we offered initially to college students, it had a bias, I guess, built into it, that you did have experience. And it sort of assumed the person was bringing a couple of years as a network or database systems administrator. And honestly, we found that the pass rate was dismal. So we designed a certification specifically for students that wouldn't have field experience. So it was, testing them, I guess, on book learning. We built in labs to give them some of that hands-on experience. And but what we have found, the certification is about 30 hours worth of content, training, labs, review materials, and these kinds of things. And as we've looked back at who has been successful, it's those folks that we offer the same program for a returning veterans program as well. And I was struck by that a lot of the folks coming out of the Army and Marine Corps were doing better than the students in community colleges. And we were kind of looking at that. And we basically interviewed a lot of the folks that passed. And what they were telling us, I did the 30 hours, then I did your practice exam, then I did the review the materials, then I did the labs again, then I did this, and it took me 40 to 45 hours. So you mentioned the experience and the preparation. What I try to convey to the students is you have to do the reviews. We didn't want to dumb down the exam to increase the pass rate. So we added a practice exam, we added some study materials. But I think a lot of what I'm seeing is the students say, I got to get that 30 hours worth of content, they do that, and they go sit for the exam, and they don't pass. And I think that review and the extra work, almost like anything in life, it pays off.
And it sounds like it's beyond the training. You got to go beyond the training. Kris, any comments from you?
Yeah, well, I think that the most important thing is having, either through preparation, or through actual experience, just having that hands-on time. And it doesn't need to be in a company. It doesn't need to be with an employer. It could be something that, you're doing in your bedroom late at night. I mean, there's lots of ways to get there. And, there's just such an incredible amount of educational resources online today. It's unbelievable. And, to be able to go out there and just really utilize those. Udacity has some incredible programs online. They've actually partnered with other companies, like Oracle and some other large companies where they're actually taking some of their training and preparing students online. And so there's many different ways to get there, and I think that's the most important thing. It doesn't need to be one way. You can get to that same end goal multiple ways. Just find the way that works for you with your schedule.
Practice. Back to what Mark was saying, yes. And what we always when we're talking mostly with self-pacers and you know, our one-off student that comes and asks us is, you know, never underestimate the power of anxiety. I mean, you can have logged all the classroom hours that you can, you know, count on hands and toes, and you get to that view center and you log into that machine and you suddenly forget everything you ever knew about a server or a rack or an OS. So a lot of the practice is really just getting yourself over that test day anxiety so that you trust that you know what you know and it's enough to pass that exam. And also some of us that have been working in IT for many, many years, you know, we've got shortcuts and better ways than Microsoft to do things and better ways than NetApp to do things and configure things. But when you go in to take a test, you're tested on best practice. Yeah. You're tested on the way Google says you're supposed to do it, and you're tested on the way HP tells you you're supposed to do it, not on the way you and your guys are doing it in the data center. Yeah. So that's where a lot of, you know, the training and the practice and the labs and the online resources really come in handy, because they'll, you know, retrain you to think about best practices versus, you know, how you might be doing it after 25 years on the job.
Okay, thank you.
We're hearing a lot about the advantages of certifications and how to approach them. How about regular academic training, associate degrees, BS degrees? Is that, I mean, so a lot of the data tells us that BS degrees are the most important criteria, but then when we talk to people, we find out that's not true. And so are HR departments just throwing that stuff out there to go kind of deep water fishing for good candidates or something? Or what's the deal? Which is it, certificates or BS degrees?
We talked about that earlier. And I think, well, I should let the credentialing bodies speak for themselves. But it, you know, at the training level and as a hire, let me just speak as a hiring manager. I still look at both. And, you know, degrees and certifications will get you in the door. I think probably today versus when I was first looking for a job 10 years ago, the requirements are probably more of a combination of, you can't really pick one path. You can't just get a degree and day after graduation walk into a Fortune 500 and expect to get hired, right? We're looking for a depth and breadth of knowledge and experience, and a combination of that that's a little more well-rounded than just a degree or just a certification. That's how, I mean, that's how I've, you know, evaluated resumes across my career the last maybe 5 years or so. That might not be true at other
I was struck yesterday, I forget which speaker, one of the keynotes mentioned, that they talked about the certification of BA degrees, but 10 years of experience trumps everything. And, you know, that quote.
We have 10 years of cloud.
Yeah, you know, that quote stuck in my mind, and I've seen that, you know, experience is that key thing. Now, the degree and maybe certification is maybe, you know, table stakes. That's the minimum ante you need to get in the door. The one thing that I've seen is, particularly maybe germane for your students, are internships and getting that practical experience. And, you know, if schools, as you're designing your curriculum and your programs, if you can build in that practical experience or a co-op, that's just invaluable. You know, we look through and you look at the degree and the certifications and all that, that's great. But if the student's done a couple internships over the summer or a co-op, I think that really makes them stand out.
We have one question.
So I have a question. Under what circumstances would you hire an AS or an AA degree student, especially when there's bachelor's degrees competing with them? So what makes you, or do you actually hire them, you guys on the panel? And if you do, what made you to do that? Kris, you want to?
Yeah, you know, I think for me, as a hiring manager, it's a track record of success. You know, and that comes in many different forms. Yes, you're right. The majority of the time, you know, there's some type of bachelor's degree there, perhaps higher, but not always. I have hired people that don't have any college degrees, and I have watched them go on and be incredibly successful and have great careers. But to me, it comes down to that track record. So what have they done? You know, do they have that degree, but what else have they done, right? Are they doing internships? Internships are so phenomenally valuable. I know they were valuable to me when I was looking, you know, many years ago. You know, do they do volunteer work? You know, if so, what kind of volunteer work are they doing? You know, have they built an app in their free time? You know, it's all those little things, right? I want to see that track record. I want to see that portfolio. And, you know, I am willing to look at all kinds of diverse backgrounds to get that portfolio.
Janet?
You know, I would certainly not disregard a BS degree, but I think that even in the next coming years that employers will start looking at combinations. What is the full package that you bring? And it's the experience, it's the, you may be picking up some of these badges or micro-credentials to complement the, you know, the activity. So it's really what you can demonstrate that sets you apart from the next person. And so a 4-year degree by itself may get you hired, but it's no guarantee. And now you can pick up some micro-credentials in some real leading-edge technologies that are not being represented in the colleges because there's always a delay. Some of those leading-edge things, you know, software-defined networking, they're not even represented in, you know, actually they're just because, yeah,
you know, the exam, right?
yeah, actually we just did, and like 4 people have taken it, but it's so new. But you know, you can start picking up these other things to build your own resume to set you apart. And if you're picking up things that are very pervasive, whether it's Microsoft or virtualization on anything, you know, those are things that are, I think, are going to stand out as being significant.
So one last question for us, and then we'll open it up. And Janet, I'm going to start with you. We were having this discussion in the car today on the way down from Sacramento. Where does test security fit into certification for community college students?
Yeah. So, you know, test security is it's critical because it demonstrates that the credential you are putting out on your resume has value. And if there is a perception that your test has been compromised and that a lot of people are getting it off the internet and just taking it, your credential just lost all its value, really. And so as a student, as the person who is achieving a credential of any kind, you want it, you know, you don't want to waste your time. You've invested time to study and money to take the test. You want it to be a secure test. You want it to have value when you put it on your resume and when you go out there and talk about it and claim that you've got this skill. You want the employers to believe you. So, you know, if a test doesn't have security, then it loses its value in the marketplace.
And I'll add to that we're watching you. I mean, we have technologies now. We have technologies that we use to help identify people who are not taking tests honorably. And I think that's a message to get to students, that if they're using internet brain dump sites, if they're working with somebody, collaborating with somebody, if they're using, you know, a spy pen to capture information to take a test, we will catch you. And you will not be awarded certification, and in some cases, you may be kicked out of a program. So, do you guys have any other thoughts on that you want to add?
I know I was struck in, as we developed the exam for this entry-level certification, that, you know, we employed SMEs, subject matter experts, to develop the questions. And I'll be honest, I was far from an expert in certification exam development, and you probably, you know this more than I. There's a whole science to it, but, you know, we wanted to have a practice exam, so we had to develop X amount. We didn't want to show the exact questions, but we wanted to give them a good sense. And then to rotate and have a pool of questions, you know, if it was a 90-question exam, you needed 150 questions. And I just know from our side, getting the SMEs to do the work to make sure that we had a pool of questions that could be rotated because people couldn't copy it, it was a bit of work.
It's a great, we've got a joke in our, amongst our group, it's a great day at Microsoft when Kaplan finds its own training materials in the dump site.
Oh.
Microsoft knows that they're so locked down. And I'm flattered that you would, you know, cheat our stuff. But Microsoft is having a great day because their stuff is obviously too locked down for the brain dumps to pick up. So they have to go and dump our stuff instead. But yeah, I mean, it's the piracy and just the shelf life. So I know candidates get really upset when you revise or reseed or, you know, these certifications and they have to recertify or upgrade or, God forbid, start from scratch. But you know, attrition is a problem. It's this exam content. I mean, it is in the classroom. Same with these certifications. If this content is out there for 2-3 years, it is dumped. More than one place in many, many countries.
Janet's got a great story about candidates to contact her.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's almost amusing because we get emails saying, I know, I passed. And you're like, well, how do you know you passed? Well, because I got the test and I compared my answers.
Wow.
So I'm like,
You shut yourself
okay,
down.
yeah. I don't think anyone should hire you because you just confessed to something that's pretty obviously wrong to do. But it's pretty unethical, and you know. But the other thing that is now becoming apparent is that they're studying brain dumps that have the incorrect answers, and so now not only now they're wasting their money, they're spending their valuable time studying and memorizing the wrong thing, and then they don't pass, and then they come and they're really angry and frustrated that they didn't pass, and it's like, oh, this is, you know, let me just scold you, and by the way,
just to learn.
you need to learn. You need to learn because guess what? If you go out and if you were able to get a job based on that, it would be pretty clear in a hurry that you don't know. You don't know.
Yeah.
So, Kris, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, the whole credibility thing is so important, right? You know, if you have candidates that are doing that, pretty quickly your certification becomes devalued.
Exactly.
You know, and and that was a huge problem, at least with programs that I've been affiliated with historically, Microsoft being one of them. But, you know, at Google, you know, we still continue to combat that. You know, you take our exams online, but we have this external webcam you have to have, and we proctor you through that webcam real time, you know, 24/7. So, but beyond that, you know, we're trying to kind of get past that model, and we have developed one exam where it's actually hands-on. You know, and it is our administrator exam. So, you know, you're actually provisioned a Google Apps domain. You go and you do some configuration. If you do it, you do it. I mean, that's, you know, it's exactly what you're striving towards.
It either works or it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and we check that on the back end with APIs, and that's how we're kind of able to get there. But I think, you know, having more either exams like that or experiences, you know, through internships, you know, and things like that, you know, because then you're proving that you can actually do the job.
And yeah.
Right. Oh, great. I'm going to open it up to questions.
I'd like to take it back to what we were discussing just before. Given sort of what I was hearing about where the employers are looking, you know, shortly in the future where we're moving there, where it sounds like employers are looking for experience, maybe added in with some certifications and a degree, if you know, or the full package there. What does it look like? You know, how does the community college play its most appropriate and competitive role, given that community college curricula is slow to change compared to the for-profits out there that are less and less expensive? And the do-it-yourself portfolio building and all of that that you can get, and those kinds of things. So how does that all play together, and what's the best role and way for the community colleges to kind of play in that bundle that makes the best candidate that the employers are actually looking for, which is strong on experience and kind of give or take a little on the academic and credentialing.
I could give you one example on that. I have a colleague in the back of the room, Bob Nelson, who's from RTP, a Research Triangle Park. We have a facility. And Bob, if you can clarify or jump in, but you know, if you looked at NetApp and you went to careers at NetApp and you looked at all of our jobs, I would say 98, 99% of them, the entry level is going to be a BS or a bachelor's degree. And so, you know, there was a sense that, well, if I'm coming from a community college with an associate degree, I can't even get my foot in the door. But we have we have jobs that don't necessarily need that. So we've launched a program with Wake Tech Community College for our support organization. Our support, the help desk and trouble ticket and the escalation processes. It's a high turnover kind of job. And it takes some specific skill set. It's both a little technical, but also how do you deal with an irate customer? How do you know when to escalate stuff and these kinds of things? So Bob and his team worked with Wake Tech Community College to design a storage and virtualization degree. And I think next month, well, this semester, the first cohort of graduates is coming through that. But to exactly your question, it included academic, internship, I think co-op that was a little different, and am I missing anything? But it basically is giving, now this is a pilot initiative with them, I think there's a dozen or more kids, but it was specifically designed, it's a win-win. You know, for us, we're getting talent in who understand our technology in a high-stress, high-demand job. I think they're going to get great jobs out of it, but it was that full package. Did I describe it correctly?
Yeah, so I think, I'm Bob Nelson, I'm support manager in RTP. Your question was, what do the community colleges have to offer? They offer a complete academic preparation to include critical thinking that the for-profits don't. So the aha moment between Wake Tech and NetApp 2-3 winters ago was they were kind of saying, they were beginning to hesitate. And I said, well, Matt, what's wrong? It's Dr. Zullo, my counterpart with Tech. And I said, Matt, I'm not looking for a churn. I'm not looking for a boot camp. And if you have an elective that's, I'm going to make it up, art history, and they have to write a 500-word essay at the end of it that shows that they can write, they can communicate, they can organize thought. That's what we need. So that's the value proposition that NetApp is looking towards the community colleges, is that this is this complete education. And I heard earlier somebody said, is it a BS or a cert that you see? And then another person said about the NetApp works with Wichita State, BS, in Wichita, one of our support centers. And in RTP, we're working with Wake Tech Community College. So it's a matter of identifying people with the talent, the ability to learn, and that have entire, well-rounded academic experience. That's what we're looking for. And we work with Mark to get the cert. The cert, the NCSA is in our program.